Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we do it. We do it live every Sunday, and then it goes. Alex does some magic and puts it out on all the other platforms tomorrow. Yep. But all right. Well, we are back again, chat. Our lovely podcast community on this fine Sunday evening. You'll have to excuse the background of my video right now because I'm in the process of starting to move houses. So my office looks a little depressing right now as everything's getting packed up and moved over to my buddy's house, who I'm gonna be moving in with here in probably about a month or so. But yep, tonight we are delighted to talk with, is it now don't hate me, is it Katana or Katana? All right, Katanna Zachry, who all right, this is the American version of banana. Yep, and you guys will have to forgive us for a little bit of the way the audio is going to sound tonight. We ended up running into some difficulties technically, but that's okay. So we're gonna have a conference call. So I'm oh, no audio. Oh, hold on one second. Try. Oh, I'm sure they do. My my FBI agent on my phone told me that we're good. So. So hopefully, Nancy, are you able to hear anything now? Is it picking up? Hopefully, it's working. Hopefully, it's working. Um, but yeah, so we're doing this kind of a little bit makeshift over a conference call. So hopefully, everything is going to come through. Not yet. Still no audio. What is going on? All right. Well, let me troubleshoot some stuff here. I don't know what is happening.
I'm gonna have to cut a little bit of audio from the beginning, but that's okay. The kinks worked out. Get to the meat and potatoes here shortly.
That's
So, from Midland originally? Actually, I'm from another town called Abilene, which is still West Texas. You know. Oh, you know Abilene? Oh, yeah. See, I grew up in McAllen, and then I went to school in Central Texas, in Kerrville, Texas. Oh, so, yes. Beautiful part of the state. Yeah, it really was. I had friends that went to Abilene Christian. I had friends that went to Midland. I had a lot of friends in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Austin. Christian, and I went to McMurray across town. Yeah. So McMurray was in our conference in baseball. Yeah. It's a great school. Very prestigious Division III football team. Yeah. And back when we were there, the students at ACC, as it was then, and Art Simmons, the Baptist College, could sneak over to our college dances. So we got to meet a lot of people from the other two colleges. Yeah, Martin Simmons was another one. Yep, absolutely. That's what a small world. Yeah. So Shriner really is. Yeah. Oh, that's a great school. Yes. Yeah, Shriner is where I went and played baseball. So we come to McMurray and Hardin Simmons and that American Southwest Conference. That's a lot of people don't know what a prestigious Division III conference that is. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. It truly is. Especially in the Midwest, I meet a lot of people that are like, "Oh, Division III, like that's nice. You play college sports." I'm like, "Well, it's a prestigious Division III." Yeah, it's not just any college group. That's right. Then how are we doing on audio?
your mom said that she can hear you, but our guest not so much. I'm trying to. It's all coming through the same phone, so I'm trying to figure out how I can boost it here.
Okay.
But I think this might be the best we're gonna get. I might have to do some.
Well, if I need to speak up, just say so.
Okay. Yeah, I figured I'd be good, Nance, because I'm still on my mic. I'm trying to get everything kind of set up. Hopefully, it's where the phone call can come through on the mic pretty decent. But we're doing our best out here. We're doing our best.
Is my audio coming through your phone, or is it coming through my mic?
It should be coming through the phone. I have you muted in Discord, so it shouldn't be coming through Discord.
Oh, so I don't need my camera or my.
No. Well, we're gonna press. We'll press and we'll see. Hopefully how it goes. I tried to do what I could on here. But anyways, we'll figure it out. Trying to. A couple more things I want to check. That's desktop audio there. It's not gonna work. All right, well, whatever. We'll just press on. Anyways, yeah. So like I was saying, we're talking with Katanna tonight, excuse me. She and her, was it your book partner? Right?
My co-author.
Your co-author, yeah. Yep, her co-author, Sarah, and you have to forgive me, I cannot remember her last name right now. Peterson, there it is. Yep, Sarah Peterson wrote a book. Took them, was it 4 years to do it?
Almost 6.
Almost 6 years to get this book written. And the book is called The Lone Star Speaks, and I just literally had that up. Hold on one second. The Lone Star Speaks: Untold Stories about the JFK Assassination. So it took them almost 6 years to write it, and about 150, give or take, interviews. Gathering.
Probably more like over 200.
There you go. About 200 interviews. Where they just gathered information and some witness testimonies and asked some new questions about what became known as the crime of the 20th century and the assassination of JFK. Um, I want to start by asking what drove you to go on this journey and write this book, specifically about the JFK assassination. What did your fascination with the assassination?
It was pure coincidence that we both happened to work at the same college. One day I happened to notice Sarah was reading a book that I had read, and it led to the JFK assassination. And in almost one breath, we said, "Oh, I've been fascinated by that for years." And we realized that we had both been reading. We hadn't been doing interviews at that point because it never entered our head we might write a book. But people overheard us talking about it and how much we knew and said, "You need to do a presentation for the West Texas History Symposium." So we did. And that was near the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination. And what we talked about is how things had changed, how much more evidence we had 50 years later than we had immediately following the assassination. And yet, the Warren Report and the Commission, the book still sits on library shelves, even though there is tons of information saying that it's full of errors and probably didn't get the results right. So that once our presentation was given and people were really interested, people just came out of the woodwork saying, "You need to go talk to my great aunt. You need to go talk to so and so." And so we just began doing interviews. And our agenda was not to say we're going to prove the Warren Commission was wrong. Our agenda was simply to preserve the stories of people who had never been talked to before. And let's face it, most of them were elderly.
Right.
So really, we could follow the breadcrumbs that they gave us. And then once we would find out that, my gosh, this person served on the Warren Commission, he knew it from the inside out. Or this person knew Lyndon Johnson well because she worked with him. Or this person knew Kennedy because she socialized with him. And these people were at the site of the assassination. Or these people were at the hospital where the autopsy was taking place. We just started capturing and treasuring these particular stories, preserving them. And then we would have to verify things because, let's face it, people's memories can be faulty.
Right.
And what we discovered is that we went ahead and put in some of the people who did think the official version was correct, but 90% of them had pieces of evidence that showed the Oswald did it by himself or Oswald did it was not what the rest of the evidence showed.
So are you telling me that Oswald didn't do it by himself? Because
let me tell you, the corner.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is much evidence that Oswald may not have even been on the 6th floor at the time the shooting was taking place. One of the people.
No, Katanna, I've seen the Warren Report. I know all the report. The government for years has told me that he was the only guy. He was up on that 6th floor. I know the window actually. He was standing outside. You're telling me that all doesn't make sense?
I'm saying it really doesn't have the evidence to support it that it should have. Think about it. The Warren Report, the Warren investigation, as they called it, was really nothing but an FBI investigation. And J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI, controlled what information the Warren Commission even received. Gerald Ford, future president, was one of the members of the commission, and he reported back to Hoover about all the information that witnesses that they might not have known about were giving them. On top of that, John McCone, who was also on the commission, was the head of the CIA. He kept the CIA's information away from them totally. So you can read newspaper articles that came out years later that will say John McCone controlled the CIA and controlled the information that the Warren Commission received. So you can't totally blame this group of investigators because FBI alone for their information. And the FBI wasn't giving them everything that there was available. So they came up, I guess, with a preconceived idea that, yes, Oswald had done it. And then somehow that didn't make it seem so terrible that we let him get murdered while he was in police custody.
So you're so you're telling me that the Alphabet Boys haven't been playing ball with each other like they're not doing right now with Congress as well? The FBI is not trying to talk to Congress.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. No kidding.
No kidding. Yeah, so I've been to Dallas before, and I went over there where the JFK assassination happened. You know, I've seen the X on the street, I've seen the buildings, I've seen the grassy knoll. And it was really interesting, you know, like looking around and trying to piece it together in your mind what happened.
Did you feel like it was smaller than the pictures made it look?
It was a lot more confined in that area than what you see from the black and white newsreels. As you watch the History Channel and that kind of stuff,
yes,
and other pictures. That area is a lot smaller than what they would have you believe. And I don't know how much it's changed since, what was it, 67?
63. It really hasn't changed much at all. The X is still there.
Right.
Not too long afterwards. We were there for the 50th anniversary, and the X had been painted out.
Oh.
And it just infuriated somebody. We don't know who. And so the next day, it was right back there where it had been before.
Yeah.
So, Dallas doesn't really want to be known as just being associated with the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
It has a long history that it's proud of. And, just like Los Angeles, somehow or another isn't known as the city that killed Robert Kennedy, but Dallas is known as the city where John Kennedy got murdered,
Right.
It just won't go away. But you're right. When you talked about, are you saying that Oswald wasn't even on the 6th floor when the firing was taking place? I interviewed a woman who was a young secretary on the 4th floor on that particular day. And she and a friend of hers named Victoria Adams were looking out the window watching the procession, heard the shots, didn't think they came from their own building. I guess they'd have been terrified if they thought that.
Right.
They just heard shots that they thought came from further down, closer to the triple underpass. And so they literally ran from window to window to see what they could see, and then thought, we want to see what's going on. And so they ran to the doorway that led to the old wooden rickety staircase, the only staircase up to the seven floors of the TSBD, the Texas School Book Depository.
Right.
And in order to see how long this took them, I went up to the 7th floor, which is open from wall to wall, and did exactly as they did, and just timed how long it would have taken them to get to the door, and it's literally a matter of less than a minute. In that length of time, they did not see anyone coming down the staircase as they started down the staircase, which someone would have had to have been. And then, unbeknownst to them, their supervisor, Dorothy Garner, followed them to the door and stood there and heard them click, click, click. They were dressed in their nice little skirts and blouses with high heels on, and you could hear them going down the stairs. And she was there when Roy Truly, the depository superintendent, and Marion Baker, the police officer, came up those stairs, and they had passed Oswald on the 2nd floor. In that length of time, no one had come down that staircase.
So what was Oswald doing? Did he stop? Did Oswald stop for a coffee and then?
Well, there was the 6th floor, the 5th floor, where there were people watching out the windows also. There was the 7th floor. Someone could have gone up to the 7th floor, but I'll tell you what's more logical. If someone actually shot from up there, there's no doubt there were people lingering around up there. In fact, one man on the 5th floor who later went downstairs and ate had been eating his lunch up there. And he didn't didn't see anyone up there with a rifle. He didn't see a rifle. But they were laying the floor on the west side of the 6th floor, and they moved all the boxes of school books down to one end. So there are just stacks of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Someone probably could have hidden between them if he was going to be patient enough. And if he was dressed appropriately, so that when the police and the sheriff's deputies, they didn't even all know each other, came storming up those stairs, he could have blended right in, perhaps.
Yeah, yep. If you know,
That's about the only way someone could have firing and blending in. But
right.
then, once again, we had so many people saying, I was standing right below, I was standing on the steps of the depository. I didn't hear a shot fired up above me. We all kept thinking it came from behind the grassy knoll area or from the triple underpass. So you would think with all of the employees that were standing on the steps of the Texas School Book Depository, somebody would have looked up and said, hey, I hear firing up there. And
Right.
nobody did. And the gentleman on the floor did not say that really heard firing up there. And of course, then we run into how many people read the Warren report later and said, that is not what I said at all. So it's disconcerting to know that we may have read almost a piece of fiction that's being passed off as fact.
Well, the government would never do that.
Oh, surely not.
Well, not to conflate this issue with aliens at all, because I don't want to conflate the two issues. I truly don't. But it in so many ways reminds me of a Project Blue Book type situation.
Yes.
And again, I don't want to conflate. Like, this is where a lot of conspiracy theory gets into a lot of trouble, because it's like aliens, Kennedy assassination, and by the way, MLK was assassinated by the American government also. Like, but when you're just examining two specific, periods in time where you have a Project Blue Book type situation where the government is very clearly trying to establish, and it doesn't matter what your findings are, the narrative of Project Blue Book is going to be that these are weather balloons, or what.
Yeah, but just the other day, literally 2 days ago, it's now opened the floor up for discussion on whether there are UAPs, as they call them.
Isn't that such a weird thing?
Yes, and
exactly. And again, I'm truly not trying to conflate the two ideas. I'm truly trying to keep them both in their own specific category, but there are so many tiebacks in the way that these three-letter organizations have had clearly an established narrative upon what has happened, and it hasn't been as much as an investigation as it is of a foredrawn conclusion that we're trying to piece narrative together to prove, versus trying to find the pieces of that narrative to truly draw a foredrawn conclusion, or not a foredrawn, but a true conclusion. And exactly, there's so many different pieces of this that, to me, like, it's like you're watching a movie play out, and it doesn't matter what the narrative or the storyline is. It's like this is all done the same way. This is all done in this vacuum, if you will, of, okay, this is the ending of the figurative movie. How are we going to draw the story in between to get to that conclusion?
Exactly. And when we do presentations, sometimes we'll start with, what if Lee Harvey Oswald had called in sick on November 22nd?
He'd probably be the happiest guy in America if he could look back 20/20 vision.
But we're thinking about what would have happened with the president. This was was not going to go away.
No.
We know now that they had an assassination plot set up in Chicago for 2 weeks before. We know that there had been a plot set up in Tampa that the Secret Service got wind of. The Secret Service had to have known that there was a good chance something would happen in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as much as I think highly, and let me make this point. When we talk about the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, we're not talking about every individual. We're talking about certain key people who had a reason for wanting Kennedy out of office, and they were not going to take a chance on him getting reelected.
Right. And maybe just to refresh some people's memories, perhaps they've data dumped some of those reasons, or maybe haven't even heard some of the reasons why all these organizations had, basically a hit out for Kennedy. What did you come across in the writing of your book that those reasonings could be?
All right. Now, in other words, who benefited?
Exactly.
Well, that's one of the questions that you'll look back, and after the assassination, Kennedy was made a martyr by the media.
Yes.
And that was not the case beforehand. Having lived in Texas and knowing people in the South, he was not well liked in Texas, particularly not in Dallas.
Well, yeah, he was a Democratic Catholic, so.
Yeah, exactly. He had made the oil men very antsy because he had talked about doing away with their oil tax allotment. He had made the military just beside themselves because he had given speeches about literally saying the whole world should work for total disarmament.
Mm-hmm.
That the only way to have peace was to do away with war. Well, the military wouldn't exist if we didn't have weapons. Exactly. And it had to be prepared for war. So you can imagine that 60-year-old colonels and generals are sitting there going, this 46-year-old man is crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
The military-industrial complex was about to take a hit to the pocketbook in the 60s, and they were not happy about it.
And on top of that, we interviewed a young man who was an American, and he grew up in New Mexico and parts of West Texas. When he was suntanned, he could pass for a Cuban, and his Spanish was better than most of the Cubans. And he was used as a former Navy sailor as part of the Bay of Pigs.
Mm.
And one of the things, once he finally, I gained his trust.
Yeah.
He told me, he said, you cannot imagine what it was like after the Bay of Pigs. He said there were bodies all over the beaches, but the Cubans, Castro's Cubans, had beheaded them with swords. And he said you couldn't find the heads that went with the bodies to try to bury them. And he said, don't think those people that were expecting air support because the CIA had promised them air support were not furious.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they blamed Kennedy. So you had people like that upset with him. You had the mafia upset with him because his brother Robert was coming after them. And here they had helped him by working with his father get elected, and the thanks they got was that he was trying to imprison them.
Right. So what we could maybe gather is that some top people from all these different organizations and walks of life maybe had a little closed door meeting and said, you know what, this Kennedy guy, enemy number one for all of us for a multitude of reasons. The enemy of my enemy is now my friend. Why don't we just deal with this and move on?
That's a perfect way of putting it. And people will sometimes say, why would all these people have worked together? And where our answer is, if you have a common enemy, why wouldn't you work together?
Exactly. And it's been proven before with the mafia and union bosses back in the day that they've worked closely with the government to get their interests aligned and things rolling, and it's not changed much nowadays. It's just all under a different name.
Exactly. We found some documents where there's proof that the CIA would request soldiers from the military because they had already many of them had already been trained as snipers,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have them temporarily released from the military, and they were assets then to the CIA. So they did work for both organizations, the CIA and whatever branch of the military they were in.
Right.
So we also know that Johnny Roselli and Santos Trafficante and Sam Giancana all worked along with the CIA because they had a vested interest in Havana also. So, politics make strange bedfellows.
Mm-hmm.
So do concerns about assassinations, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's where you get the closest to the truth on the whole Kennedy assassination thing, is when you start to tie in some of the mob boss type situations and the CIA, FBI type allegations. I don't think, unless we ever get the Kennedy files released by an president, which is another thing that I want to talk about. When Trump was going to release the Kennedy documents, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, no, these aren't going to get released. It, to me, was like watching a real life situation of where, like, a president from the outside, and I'm not a Trump advocate, I'm not a Trump denier, I'm just talking about someone who gets into a presidential type situation. It's like, okay, we should release these files. And then maybe he gets a look at the files and it's like, well, maybe we don't release these.
I'm fully convinced that when each outgoing president welcomes the new incoming president, there's a period of time before inauguration where they all sit down in a room and go, look, here's some national secrets. These don't get released ever. You can look at them. You can look at them, but you're not going to tell the public about this because it's going to destroy the world.
Kennedy, and I think the first thought that comes to mind when someone like Trump, who had said he was going to release everything, and so would Clinton, when all of a sudden they're confronted with something so either terrifying that you would not want the American public to know it had ever occurred, or something that is still being done and you wouldn't dare release it because we're still using that particular strategy. We can't, something legitimate kept them from releasing all of these documents.
And 50 years is not that long of a time span, so it's not outside the realm of possibility to believe that these tactics are still being used because they're effective.
Well, it's also, you can imagine how upset the CIA has been, even though a great many of the people involved are dead, but how upset the agency has been because they have already released the information about Operation Mockingbird, Operation Northwoods, Operation Paperclip, and the worst of all, MK Ultra, where they were using LSD and mind control on American citizens, even our armed force, our general enlistees.
Yeah.
If all of that has managed to get released, how bad is this that they will not release?
It's gotta be absolutely horrendous. If they're up in arms about all that other stuff getting released, this one's got to be 10 to 20 times worse.
That we experimented of our own citizens, and when they were unwittingly parts of experiments with drugs like LSD and hypnosis and mind control. What could be worse than that? I'm not sure I can think of anything.
Apparently, assassinating a sitting president is worse.
Yes, and it could be that we have a plan in place that when the president does not go along with what the insiders want done, this is what will happen. But we certainly can't let the American people know that, or they wouldn't bother to vote.
Exactly. I feel like that's part of the briefing that he gets coming in. You release these, JFK type situation again, and we're gonna make it look like it was an accident.
Yes.
Well, they're in the ultimate position in the sense that, they, in their minds, believe that they do control the narrative and they do control, especially like the media at this specific point in time. There's so many different routes and avenues you could go down in the conspiracy rabbit hole of this discussion, but I do like to stay in the realm that you're currently, at least for me, feels like you're residing in like the top level of like, let's talk to some of the people that were, in this building. Let's try to dissect some of the real life type of not decision making, but what did these people see? What truly happened on this day? And I guess I have a two-part question. A, so you grew up in Midland. You're from Midland. Were you around? I mean, do you remember the JFK Assassination Day?
Yeah, actually, I grew up in Abilene, which is
Abilene, yeah.
I was 11 years old and was living in El Paso at the time. And so I knew this is one of my most vivid historical memories. Is this and knowing that in El Paso the border was shut immediately, which it should have been. But of course, a lot of Americans were caught in Juarez overnight. A lot of people from Mexico were caught in El Paso overnight, and it was a frightening thought that you were, in a way, we had put up a border immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, my grandparents lived in Dallas. My grandfather was an oil man. And so my mother called my grandmother immediately and said, "Oh my gosh, we just heard all these things on the radio about what's happened in Dallas, what's going on." Well, as the wife of an oil man, this is what her response was. "All I can tell you at this point is that the wives of the oil men are calling each other frantically, 'Do you know where your husband is?'" And my mother said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Well, we're kind of half serious, but it was lunchtime. Secretaries were out. The men were out of the office." She said, I know how bitter the oil men were about Kennedy. I know the conversations that took place at the Petroleum Club. I think some of us really thought, oh my gosh, it's hunting season. He finally went over the edge. He just went downtown and shot him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So she said that was one of the first results that we were thinking of. I was lucky that she saved me all of the newspapers from Dallas and the surrounding areas. So even as an 11-year-old, I was frantically going through them, reading them, and I could tell that the story was changing.
Mm-hmm.
The first day, the Parkland doctors were describing this type of wound. The next day, they were talking about possibly something else had happened. I happened to get hold of a news reporter who had written up one of those stories. Her name was Connie Kritzberg. She worked for the Dallas Times-Herald. And she told me she said, yes, I was so fortunate that 3 of the Dallas surgeons who had worked on Kennedy called our newspaper and said, look, we're going to tell you what we saw, because we didn't know whether you had a chance to hear the actual report that was given from Parkland. But they described what they saw as far as wounds, and she wrote the article up. The next day, when she read it in the paper, there had been a sentence added that changed the meaning. And being a good reporter, she was furious and called down to the newspaper and said, "Who on earth changed my story?" And the editor said, "The FBI did."
Wow.
That happened at 3 o'clock the afternoon of the Kennedy's assassination.
And so what
now,
sorry, go ahead.
That leads us to 2 other people that we got to meet and talk to and interview who were on what were called abort teams. They really were more like intervention teams. One was working with the U.S. Marshals. One was working with a group of people that he wasn't sure who had put together. But both teams were in Dealey Plaza, and they were there to try to prevent an assassination. You can't be sent there if you don't know there's a good chance it's going to happen.
Right.
Which means you wouldn't have known that a lone nut got back to his wife and decided to shoot the president.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked one of these men, I said, "So were you looking for Oswald?" And he started laughing. He said, "No, but I did know Oswald, and I knew the second Oswald too," which made us think that, well, they're right. There was more than one man pretending to be Oswald. But he said, "No, we were looking for military snipers. That's who we knew was going to be participating in an assassination attempt, not some man that climbs up on the sixth floor and is mad at his wife."
Right. So what did the surgeons tell that reporter that they saw?
Well, he had described the neck wound as a simple, neat, clean wound from the front in the throat.
Oh, from the front.
From the front, yes, that changes everything.
Yeah,
Oswald
because
could not have hit him. But if you look at the original newspapers, there were then some articles that came out once they'd arrested Oswald. Any good reporter knows there's something wrong here. So they were fed the story that Kennedy had turned all the way around to his right, facing the depository, which would have been awfully hard for him to have done considering his back problems, and he was waving, and that's when Oswald shot him in the throat. Okay, the Zapruder film is released a few years later. Kennedy never turned all the way around.
Right,
So that little story.
Yeah, because you can see that in the newsreels at the time of the shooting, he was facing forward.
Yes, but they didn't have an actual video, or what we would call a video,
right.
was a movie camera. They didn't have that the public got to see. Now, everyone who saw the original Zapruder film and some of the other photos, they knew he never turned to face the back. But since they wanted Oswald to be the lone assassin, how do you explain a throat wound? Well, they explained it later, and Gerald Ford took care of this. He looked at the drawings that they had them make, rather than the Warren Commission never looked at autopsy photos. They only looked at drawings. He looked at the drawings, and he realized there had been a shot from the back, obviously, that hit him in the shoulder. And so then we had the wound in the throat. So Gerald Ford said, and he took a pencil and he moved that little shoulder wound, and he admitted this. It was in the New York Times. He moved it to the neck area. He said, now, that way we have a bullet that goes through the neck, out the throat, and into Conley. And that's where the single bullet theory comes from.
Interesting.
And this is also about the time where the magic bullet theory comes into play, to where they're able to recover that specific bullet that has been fired through two human bodies, and is able to be recovered and displayed, and by the way, being able to take a picture of, where if you know anything about ballistics, and if you're a ballistics expert whatsoever, you're saying there's no way that specific round was able to be recovered and taken a picture of. I mean,
recovered isn't really the word.
Mm-hmm.
On the hospital gurney. And we have a very interesting story in our book that the Secret Service agent who was driving the backup car behind Kennedy told about where that bullet came from. But you're right. But then if you go back to the real wounds, it doesn't matter whether they found a bullet in the car that they claimed went through Conley. There was no bullet that hit Kennedy in the back of the neck.
Well, exactly.
So,
right.
And not only that, so take that piece out of the puzzle, just completely, which is a very valid piece of the puzzle to mention here. Just ballistics experts who would examine the flight path of that bullet and how it explodes upon impact, and how that bullet is supposed to react upon encountering its intended desired subject. There is no way that bullet would look the way that it does upon its final resting place. It's almost extreme bizarro world to suggest. Like, it's so wild to even think that this is the bullet that we recovered. It's like, okay, well, think about the fire. Think about the projection. Think about what it traveled through. It's like you need A, B, C, and D to all add up to E, and you don't have an A or a B or a C or a D. So
how many pieces of shrapnel and bullet were still in Conley when they did it?
Yeah. Yep. So yeah,
it's bizarre world. It's crazy.
all they did. All they did that day was take some round that was fired very similar out of another similar rifle, shot that into something, and we're like, here, found it. Here you go.
Let me break it down again to just as simple as a possible as I could. It's you have the number one, and then another number one, and then another number one, and then another number one. And you're like, okay, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4. Right? Let's just break it down as simple as possible. Well, let's start dissecting that initial number one. I'm not so sure this is a number one. This might be like a half, or this might be like a 0.75. This might be like a 0.125. I'm not exactly sure what this number could be. And then let's take all 4 of those number ones and examine that number one with the exact same examination. So now we have 4 number ones, but we're not exactly sure that all of these 4 consecutive number ones are all number ones that line up to a number 4. But the Warren Commission says, let's just take all of these number ones at face value and let's all equate these to a number 4. Right? Like, that's good.
These
this is fine.
They ended up coming out at like a 3.89, and they said, nah, we'll round up to a 4.
A 3.89 would be great, Ben. That would be like a pretty close. I could live with the 3.89 out of those 4 number ones. Like, well, that's pretty close to the end result we were looking for, so it's still a hypothesis, but we're not exactly where we want. We're at like 1.75. And they're like, no, it's a 4. It's a 4. It's definitely a 4. Right? Yeah, exactly. So we're the FBI. So this is a 4. That's right. Crazy.
And then when you get the even more bizarre part about Kennedy's body leaving Parkland looking like and arriving at Bethesda's own theater looking different in a different type coffin with the body bag that he was never put into. That, you just think some of this is so unbelievable that is why some people throw their hands up and say, I can't, conceive of how elaborate this scheme must have been.
Yeah.
But when he left Parkland, he had a nice, neat wound in his throat that they had done a tracheostomy through, but it was not a large hole at all.
Mm-hmm.
When they opened him up on the table, there was a gash in his throat, like someone had been probing for a bullet, which is probably exactly what someone had.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people we interviewed, 2 of them were actually at Bethesda that night at the autopsy. James Jenkins was said literally he was standing on Kennedy's head, and of course they did not see the wound in the shoulder. Parkland had never noticed the wound in the shoulder. I mean, my God, there was a gaping hole in his skull. That didn't care about the wound in his shoulder anyway.
Right.
But once you get to the autopsy, you're supposed to look at all the wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And he said one of the first things that was noticeable that you could not overlook is that the man's spinal cord had already been cut. And so I remember Sarah and I were in a small group meeting with him, and we said, "No, wait, how could a spinal cord have been cut?" He said, "It shouldn't have. That's done during an autopsy in order to release the brain." He said it wasn't even necessary. The brain was practically gone. But he said somebody had cut that man's spinal cord. And he said it did not happen at Parkland Hospital. So he said that was my first indication. Some surgery had already been performed on this man before we started the official autopsy.
Well, let's take another ride down into the land of make believe and what ifs. And for why did we cut the spinal cord?
Well, normally you would have cut it to try to get it releases the rest of the brain.
Right.
Now,
he has no brain, so what's the point?
That's a good point, but it meant someone had been tampering with the body. And of course, you have to remember what James Jenkins and most of the people in that autopsy theater had no idea what the body had looked like at Parkland. So a lot of this they just assumed had been done at Parkland until they found out, no, the Parkland doctors hadn't done any of this. They hadn't enlarged the throat wound. They hadn't cut the spinal cord. Somebody had been tampering with that body, and the only logical reason would be to change the appearance so that they could say the shots all came from behind.
Some shenanigans were happening in the hearse between the two hospitals.
Well, I suspect there was another. Some people think that this was done at Walter Reed, which is a hospital very close to Bethesda.
Right.
And it could have been. It's also possible this wasn't the only room you could have done a very quick autopsy in. The chances are that the doctors that were handpicked to do this autopsy, who had never done a gunshot wound autopsy, were told, find the bullets, do whatever you have to do to get these bullets, because we want them out of the body, and we want it to make sure that there is no evidence of frontal shots. So, whatever they had to do. Let's face it, once you had the autopsy at a military hospital, those men were taking orders. They had no choice in the matter.
Right. They got told, do this, and they said, yes, sir.
Now, if this autopsy had taken place in Parkland, Dr. Earl Rose would have not been under the auspices of the military. There would have been an honest autopsy, but thanks to the Secret Service, that body did not remain at Parkland Hospital. And you can't blame anyone else except the Secret Service.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have another question. So, speaking of, frontal wound and stuff, I don't know, you've probably seen or heard it in your interviews and goings around writing your book, but I remember not terribly long ago, there was something floating around the internet where it was, I can't remember who it was in the front seat of Kennedy's car, but they had slowed the video down, and it, and maybe they tampered with it, maybe not, but they had slowed it down enough to try and show that maybe it was one of the people in the front seat that had fired the shot into Kennedy.
Yes, I've seen that. And William Greer, the driver, does turn around two times to look at Kennedy when he should have been just hitting the accelerator and literally getting out of there.
Right.
But it does blur, and I can see why some part of it does look like he was pointing something at it. But I mean, I think that's one of those things that he didn't have a gun in his hand a second before when he was driving the car. I don't know how he could have grabbed one. I don't think you would have turned around and let Nellie Conley see you aiming at the president.
Right.
I think that's just literally just shadows in the way things look. I don't think there's any evidence that ever took place. After all, if you kill the president, you're with him all the time. You don't do it in front of.
You don't do it in front of thousands of people on a busy street.
I think that's where conspiracy, Twitter or whatever you want to call it, gets a little bit too far into the weeds.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
you'd be surprised how many people will encourage that.
Oh my gosh.
The questioning seem crazy
Yeah. I mean, I just had to ask the question because I know I was floating around, and I'm sure you had something, pop up somewhere in
Yeah,
regards to
we
it.
heard about that too. We also, I read the book about by the gentleman that thought that the Secret Service agent who did have a AR-15 in the backup car, he was holding it. There's pictures of him holding it. Thought that he had accidentally shot the president. And what we've examined to see if there was any chance that could have happened. I mean, I'm sure the possibility that it might have happened is there. But when you examine the film and the photos, nobody in the backup car reacts to a sound as loud as an AR-15 going on.
Right.
And there would be no way you could not react when a gun goes off right literally next to you.
Yeah, 100%. I've shot enough of those in my life. I know what they sound like.
So, I think that was a very interesting theory. Would the Secret Service have covered that up? Possibly. But I don't think there's any evidence.
The amount of things that would have had to, like we've talked about earlier, that would have had to line up for an accidental shot to hit Kennedy from the backup car like that is just astronomical. And it was a frontal wound anyway.
Yeah, that's still not going to explain that throat wound.
Uh-huh.
And that's what was literally killing them, because they knew whoever was on the 6th floor, if anybody was firing from there, only had 6 seconds to get off 3 shots.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they found out that one shot had hit the curve and grazed the cheek of a bystander, okay, that takes a shot away. That's when what some people call the magic bullet, others call the single bullet theory, came into play, when we had to explain how on earth we missed a shot, how on earth they wounded Kennedy and Conley.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the part that makes it, the quote unquote magic bullet is, you're not only impacting one person, but you're impacting two. So how in the world did that shot come from where the official narrative is explaining that it came from? Because we're not talking about a realm of could have beens or would have beens, or maybe it was here or maybe it was there. You're speaking specifically about ballistics at this point in time. And so how did this shot impact the people that it's said to have impacted? And not said to have, but did impact. So you were kind of stuck in this place where I'm not so sure that this ballistic shot came from where the official narrative says it is. It can't have.
Yeah.
And all that had been accurate, why would someone have had to alter the body before the autopsy?
Or why would we say that we have a magic bullet and here's the bullet that should have been on the gurney table, where any ballistics expert would say, that's not a bullet that's been through people.
Right.
Yeah.
Why didn't they listen to Governor Conley when he and his wife both said he was not hit by the same bullet that hit Kennedy?
Mm.
He was an expert huntsman. He recognized the sound of bullets being fired immediately.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was a news report, a writer, Wayne Madsen, asked Conley one time privately. He said, let me ask you, you're famous for saying, my God, they're going to kill us all. And he said, yes, I did say that. And he said, what made you say that? And he said, I was in the Navy. I know a crossfire when I enter one.
Mm. Yeah.
It does somewhat give a little bit of explanation for why the driver may have actually hit the brake. If you had a bullet coming at you and there was a hole in the windshield,
mm-hmm.
then you would realize, I'm in a crossfire. Where can I go?
Right.
Well, of course, training he should have just hit the accelerator and got down there as fast as possible. But he wasn't the driver that they had until a few months before the other driver had died of a heart attack. But I think part of it is human instinct. When something's coming right at you, your foot hits the brake.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to override that instinct and say,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a break and swerve type mentality versus a gun it and get out of here.
It's a miracle that Conley and Kennedy that were the only two that were injured. It's a miracle the two women weren't injured as well as the driver and the other Secret Service agent.
Right. Well, I mean, if you
Well,
keep the running theory going that it's, maybe it was a crossfire and these were, trained military individuals, they know how to pick their targets.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
that's just because Lee Harvey was such a good shot. They knew.
Well, now, two that we visited with had been fellow Marines with him.
Mm.
And one of them just said, look, both of them said, I don't believe Oswald did it. And I said, okay, tell me why. One of them said, because I saw him shoot after he'd been training and the marksmanship test.
So probably why his round hit the curb.
The other man who knew him really well said there was something going on with Oswald, and he said, I'll just tell you what I honestly think. He would go around spouting this Marxism stuff, and he would play Russian records, and he was learning to speak Russian. And finally, I just got him aside one day and said, listen, you don't really believe this communistic crap, do you? And he answered me, no, but I have a job to do.
Interesting.
And so when he heard that Oswald had been arrested, this man is still alive, by the way. He called the Dallas police and said, look, I'm a police officer now, but I was a fellow Marine with Oswald. I knew him well. I will come to Dallas. I think I can convince him to tell you what's really going on, because he said I had already decided he was a government agent. He said, they didn't have any need for me. And I said, well, Jim, if you'd been saying, I'll come and testify that he's the craziest person, he'd be willing to shoot anybody, they'd have probably flown you there personally. And he said, probably would have.
Been a helicopter in his front yard within the hour.
But if I was going to suggest that he might have been a government agent, no, they didn't want to hear that.
No, because now you're a crazy person.
Yeah. And he's not going to back up the story we already had in place.
Right. Interesting.
It's all a bunch of craziness.
It is. So, I'm interested now, after you spent all this time, you and Sarah, on this book and talking to all these people. What is where are you at? What is your working theory that you think happened during the Kennedy assassination?
Well, I think our first thought was, like a great many people, it was an either or. Either it was this group or this group or this group or this group, but it couldn't have been several groups together.
Mm-hmm.
The more we talked to people from different backgrounds with different pieces of information, the more we realized that, yes, there were groups of people. And plausible deniability is the name of the game.
100%.
One group plans it, another group finances it, another group executes it, and then another group is in charge of covering it up. None of them know what all of the others were doing. So when they're asked about things like that, they can honestly say, I don't know.
Well, let's roll with that for a little while, because you just said all these groups were responsible for different things, and I already just, as you were saying, that came up with a little working theory, I guess, for myself. So the planners, I guess, for me, if I had to think about it, would probably be the FBI on the planning side of things, financed by the mob, and
don't forget the CIA.
And then the CIA, right? The CIA on the execution side, I think, because they had the means to get the people in the places that they needed to.
But you have to remember, that would also include military snipers. Perhaps.
Exactly, right. So they handpicked them out of the military, took a look at a few records here and there, and found the ones with the the best records as far as snipers were concerned, and placed them where they needed to, and then they just let the White House and whoever else take care of the cover up.
Yes, and there is an interesting book. I talked on the phone with this author named John Gold, and his book is called 365 to Dallas, where he lived next door to a man who finally confessed, and John Gold is a minister, so in a way it was a type of confessional, that he had been in the Navy, the military, and he was one of the snipers who was on the top of the building right across from the Texas School Book Depository.
Mm.
That gentleman who went by, in the book, they just used the name Mark as a name. He ate himself. I don't know what his real name was. Died recently. But he verified that the U.S. Marshals were there.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he was, as he finished his assignment, changed, got out of his janitor's-looking construction worker's jumpsuit
Mm-hmm.
and his little suit that made him look like the Secret Service. He was walking toward the triple underpass. And originally he told John Gold, I met a young U.S. Marshal who demanded my credentials to see who I was. That was one of the men that we had interviewed. Now, later, John Gold took it upon himself, and now he says, well, I'm going to have to correct this in my new edition. He said, I didn't know there were any U.S. Marshals in Dealey Plaza, but there were. And he said, so I changed his wording, U.S. Marshal, to a policeman. But once he read our book and said, yes, there were U.S. Marshals there, he went, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Mark had said, that a young U.S. Marshal had stopped him. And that was the man that we had interviewed who was there with U.S. Marshal Robert Nash, who is mentioned in the Warren Report. They were there trying to abort this or intervene and keep this assassination from happening. So oftentimes people's stories verified each other's, and they didn't even know each other.
Oh my goodness, that must have been like just having minimal interactions with that about stuff that's not even this important. That must have been super super cool as you went through compiling this book to see all these stories lining up from people
Yes,
that never
that's what
interacted.
We did, is the charts as to who verified whom. And there was another incident. That young marshal was there, and I said, "What was your role? I know you're there to intervene, but what were you supposed to be doing?" He said, "I literally was on the ground," and he said they had not shut off the road like you would have thought they would have. There was other traffic on the highways, and he said, "I was there to make sure another car didn't ram the president's car because they hadn't closed it down to traffic like they should have."
Right, that's
And
strange.
so I interviewed an older man who had been a teenager that day, and he had laughed and told me about, some friends and I got out of school, told them we were going to see the president, and he said what we really did is we drove over to our rival school because we had a big football game that night. We yelled things at them, and he said there wasn't even anybody outside, but it made us feel good. And in the meantime, one of us was looked old enough, we stopped and bought a six-pack of beer. So then we decided, we better go down to Dealey Plaza so we can at least pretend we saw the president.
Right.
So he said we were coming as the president's motorcade was exiting. And he said, all I remember, and he said, Miss Zachry, this day I don't know what it was I saw, but he said I saw this beautiful dark blue Lincoln Continental, and he said, I do cars, I love cars, with a man lying on top of it in red just everywhere. And he said it was speeding, getting off of the street, and we passed it. And I couldn't, he said, to this day, I don't know what I was looking at. And I told him, I said, you were looking at the president's car. That was Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent that had thrown himself over the car to try to keep Jackie Kennedy in the car.
Mm-hmm.
The red was blood. And he went, oh my God, I never knew that's what we saw. So later, when I asked the young U.S. Marshal, did you see anything unusual in the traffic that day? He went, all I saw was a car full of 3, 4 teenage boys who were just gawking like they're rubbernecking.
Uh-huh.
Well, what once again, here was somebody who had verified that yes, these teenage boys had driven right past the motorcade.
That's wild. That's giving me goosebumps right now listening to all these things
I mean,
connect.
just pinch ourselves at the same. I can't believe we bumped into these
I
people.
know.
You know?
I'm envisioning in my head while y'all are writing this book that you just had multiple whiteboards with red string connecting to everybody in a room, and it looked like a
that's
spider web.
exactly right. One day we were looking for a man who'd been a detective investigating an area of the assassination, and we named J.D. Lucky. We couldn't find him, and a young reporter from Midland College's newspaper came to interview us, and I mentioned something about my husband had been in Vietnam. And went, "Oh, that reminds me, I need to call up J.D. Lucky. He's a veteran. I need to talk to him." And Sarah and I both said, "J.D. Lucky, the guy who used to be a detective?" And he said, "Yeah, my mother was his secretary." And he gave us his number, and we were able to get hold of him that way.
That's
But that's when sometimes you sit there and think, "Gosh, it's almost like we got a little angel on our shoulder pointing us where to go."
Yeah. Telling you, taking you by the hand and just leading you to the people you needed to talk to.
Saying, "Here's what you need to know. Yeah, talk to this person."
Wow, that's insane. That's wild.
Well, I think we're coming up on the end of it, Benjamin.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've pretty much hit everything, and this just been a wild interview, and I've loved every minute of it. Honestly, it's been super cool.
Well, this is just literally the tip of the iceberg.
Well, I can tell. I know we could
I know,
sit here for 3 or 4 hours talking about all of this.
You're right. I've done it before.
Well, I think there's definitely another interview in the mix for sure to continue to expound on.
If you get a chance to read the book, you'll have 1,000 more questions, and we'll be happy.
Well, I'm gonna add it to my Amazon cart and put it in my library and try and find some time to read it. That way, the next time we get to talk, I can just rapid fire all these questions off.
Well, it's too bad you're not in San Antonio. We're going down this weekend to do a book signing. We'd love to meet you in person.
Oh my goodness, that'd have been so great. I was gonna ask.
Katanna, I need you to let me know when you're going to be in San Antonio. Like, send me an email, and I will plan to be there. I'll come visit some friends. We'll do a live podcast. It would be awesome.
It's literally, I don't know if we can do a live podcast because we're at a bookstore, but it's literally this Saturday at the Pearl Brewery District at the Twig Bookshop.
I know exactly. I don't know the exact brewery you're talking about, but I know exactly where you're at in San Antonio.
Well, we're going to be there Saturday from about 10 to 6.
One of these times, it won't be able to happen this soon, but one of these times I need to come down to San Antonio or wherever you guys be at, and we'd love to meet you, because it would be so fantastic to meet you.
Yeah, it'd be super great. Which ties in.
Enjoy meeting you too.
Yeah, that ties into my other thing. So, do y'all just kind of stay in Texas and tour around in Texas and do that, or how far have you gone before with your?
We've been asked to speak at places like Alexandria, Virginia, and New Orleans, and we go up to Oklahoma occasionally, and just kind of depends on where conferences are and things like that. There are going to be several conferences this November because this is the 60th anniversary in the Dallas area, probably other places too. But that's a great way to get to meet some of the researchers, and so many of them have passed away because they started researching. They were adults when this happened, so they're much older even than I am. But it's a great way to meet people who have met other people, and after a while you feel like, oh, I know so and so because I knew so and so who talked to so and so.
Right.
So like, for example, it was amazing to talk to people who'd been at that autopsy. Things of that nature.
Well, we'll have to get an email from you, kind of a list of conferences you're trying to attend to or going to be at, and I've got plenty of days, and we'll have plenty of days of leave saved up by November, so I might try and coordinate something with Alex where we come down and
Yeah,
chat
and
with you.
listen, if y'all could come to Dallas, believe me, you could talk to a dozen people, and so they'd all have a dozen different theories, perhaps. But we have finally begun to learn, besides a few of the strange ones, almost everybody has a piece of the puzzle. They just don't know it.
Well, shoot, at this rate, Alex, we might have to coordinate a little like live.
In December, we're going to Dallas. Okay,
All right.
Mark that on your calendar right now.
I was gonna say
that's an easy trip for me.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll have to, we'll get the phone cameras rolling while we're out there talking and corroborate when we get back to the hotel room and kind of put together an impromptu, like, the What in the World podcast is out exploring. We just become investigative podcasters.
Listen, your audience would love it until you've seen the depository and in the grassy knoll. It just makes it come alive.
I know. It was crazy when I was down there. I saw all of it when I was down there, and that was back in oh shoot, what year was that? That was probably 2018, I think, when I was down there.
Oh, we're doing it for sure.
For the 50th, it was amazing. But yeah, I'll let you know every bit of information I can. Maybe y'all could do a podcast with several different people.
Oh, that would be
so sweet, Katanna. If we could do it with you and like have all of your like specific people around to
that would be
share
super
their
cool.
Stories. It would be so sweet. Yeah, that would be awesome.
We'll see if we can make that happen.
Yes, ma'am. We'll do something. We'll figure it out. And we'll definitely stay in contact. Well, again.
Ben, take time off from the military right now in December. Okay?
Just tell me.
The first couple weeks of December.
Tell me.
Well, remember, it depends. The conference is around the time of the assassination anniversary, the end of November.
Okay.
Well, that sounds good to me because I'm not gonna. Family holidays this year probably gonna be happening way early, so I'm gonna have plenty of time come Thanksgiving and Christmas time to where I can just go and do what I need to do. So
you're right. Any time in the fall gives you an idea of what it was like 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this. This is a good idea. We got to make this happen. Well, Katanna, and I thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to talk with us. This has been amazing, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. So we definitely need to kind of maybe format this as a ongoing series because this has been amazing. But yeah, thank you so much. I don't know, Alex, you want to do the normal question? I don't know if it fits in with what we were talking about. I think so. Yeah. So I appreciate it so much, y'all out there that tuned in. Thank you for bearing with us through our technical difficulties. Hopefully, it wasn't too hard to hear. And we will see you guys next week. Who's on the docket for next week, Alex?
I think next week is our prestigious guest from a rap group.
Oh, so that's the next one. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to completely give away who it is.
All right. Well, we got a real big guest planned for next week. You all not gonna want to miss that one. But anyway, we won't take up any more of your time. Katanna, thank you once again, and I hope you have just a great rest of your evening.
You too. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll see you.
Thank you, Katanna. You're the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, hot dang, y'all! What a interview that was! Holy Moses, dude! We went all over that rabbit hole, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. That's the type of conspiracy stuff that I can go ahead and get behind on that. I like that. That's nice.
That felt so much like a conspiracy podcast because it was all done through an earpiece in my ear.
He had an earpiece, and I had my phone sitting on the charger with the mic pushed down about as close as I could get to it, so we could capture everything. That's gonna be that's a good one. I hope next time we can work through the audio issues and get it a little bit more clear for everybody. But that was awesome.
I couldn't hear myself in the headphones. I couldn't hear her in the headphones, I couldn't hear. You in the headphones, it seems so much more normal now to be talking to.
Yeah, but we unintentionally really leaned into the
we
conspiracy
got
side
it
of
done
it.
though. we got it done though, bro.
We got it done. So you know what, y'all, look out for something special coming from us towards the end of the year, because I think that's going to be a real fun excursion, a little What in the World podcast field trip down to Dallas. And I think that we could. It won't be something that happens live. I think we get a hold of a camera or something and do a little bit of recording and kind of spend a little bit of change to get a camera and a mic and go talk to some people.
The thing is that could be very real. Like, especially with the JFK topic, we could legitimately get like a conference room booked out.
Yeah, we just go book a hotel down in Dallas, and I feel like I'm in the planning stages of this right now already, so I feel like we get some pretty sick footage of Dallas and the boys shooting some shots. Well, that's a terrible pun. Filming some stuff. Filming some stuff around the grassy knoll and the Texas School Book Dispensary. And then
not the grassy knoll shots.
And then, kind of tie that into a pretty sick, lead into talking to some people in a conference room or something. Shoot. I think that'd be fun. I'd take a couple weeks off just to fuck around down there.
I think we could legitimately take a weekend off and go hang out in Dallas and hear Katanna Banana. And
hopefully get a chance to talk to Sarah too. She was out on the road tonight and wasn't able to hop on here with us. But yeah, I think that'd be something. I don't know. Y'all let us know in the comments if down here below this live video if you want to see something like that. And for all you guys listening out there just on the audio world, I don't know if there's comments on the bottom of those that we can see. But yeah, let us know and email us if you think that's something that would be pretty sick. Comment on the YouTube here, or DM us on the old socials that'll pop up here in a few. But I think we're gonna call
find us on the socials.
Find us out there, dude. We're out there. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. We've taken enough of y'all's time tonight. Appreciate you guys as always sticking with us through this journey on this podcast that we run. And I don't know, maybe in the future more field trips will happen. We'll just have to see. But you guys have a great night. We love you. And as always,
make sure you tell somebody you love them, okay?
All right, we'll see you guys next week for a real special guest.
Bye. Love you guys.
Love y'all.